Hi, my name is Susanna Zarajski. I'm the author of the book Language is Music, about how to learn languages using music and the media. Today I'm actually not going to talk about how to learn languages. I'm actually going to talk about how languages make me feel, the resonance of languages. And this is a topic that I rarely see discussed. Most of the time I see people talking about how the structure of a language may change the way somebody thinks, or I see people give exams with fake languages to find out what the aptitude would be of somebody to learn languages. I know that some government agencies do that, and also some government researchers or university researchers. To be honest, if somebody gave me an aptitude test for a fake language with fake sounds, for fake objects, I would probably fail. And I speak 7 languages. Why would I fail? Because if something isn't real and I don't care for it and I don't feel it, why should I learn it? Now, when I talk about the resonance of language, there are 2 aspects of resonance. One is the resonance of the sound waves. We learn about that in physics. And the sound waves in our body, we have frequencies, and we may feel a certain way when we make certain sounds. For example, in Portuguese and Russian, there are nasal vowels, and if you touch your nose vibrates a little bit when you say those sounds. Some people, when they learn a new language, they don't like the way their body feels when they have to make these new sounds. The other part of resonance for me is about how I feel when I speak a language. And I realized that I actually have kind of like a different personality in each language I speak. There are some characteristics of me which are stronger in some languages than in others. And I have a series of videos of 6 videos where I'm speaking in 6 different languages, explaining how I feel in each language. Obviously in English, then in Russian, which is my first language, Spanish, and Italian, Portuguese, and French. The other language that I speak that I'm not doing a video about is Bosnian or Serbo-Croatian, and that's because a lot of my feelings in reference to Bosnian have to do with life in Bosnia after the war, and I don't care to discuss that in a video. So the reason I bring this up is because when I have a different way of expressing myself in each language, or when I feel differently in each language, that's an extreme richness that I have in my life that I wouldn't have if I only spoke one language. For most of my life, actually being a polyglot was a major nuisance. And it's because I didn't know what to do with my languages. Most of the time people would either make me into some sort of freak show at a party and say, oh, look at her, she speaks these languages. Hey, say something in 6 or 7 languages, as though I were some clown or like a freak show at the circus where people look at, because the person looks funny or does something weird. Or I would be asked to interpret or translate, and I happen to hate interpreting and translating. But when I realized that the languages I have actually bring an amazing amount of richness to my life, I started to think about being a polyglot in a different way. And that's what I want to talk about, because I want people to be inspired to learn foreign languages, not just because of the communication that you can have with people in a different country, the job opportunities you can have, but because you enrich yourself when you speak another language. There are aspects of your personality that you may not have realized existed, but they come about in a different language because of the aspects of that language. Whether that language be very melancholic or very melodramatic or very philosophical, whatever it happens to be. Also, when you think in a different way, in another language, you realize that there are different ways to see the world. And that's an important part of being a polyglot, is actually seeing the world with new eyes, or having a new soul in each language. So I bring about this idea of languages because I also want to talk about my own experience. Now, when I was around 15, I realized that I made a mental shift from Russian, which is my first language, Russian, to English, which is the language I learned when I came to the United States when I was a child. The reason I made this shift was because there were new ideas that I wanted to explore in my life. I wanted to go to a private school, I wanted to study abroad, and when I expressed these ideas in Russian to my parents' friends, Russian speakers, they would tell me, it can't happen. You don't have the money, your parents don't have the money, you can't go to private school, you can't go study abroad, it's not going to happen. No, 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 no. When I spoke about this in English to English speakers in the United States, people actually gave me the opportunity to think about it. Some people supported me. One of my parents' friends actually took me to the library to help me find out about private schools. I realized that when I said things in English, people responded to me. I could say new things, I could have innovative ideas, I could think about new opportunities, and it's not that those words didn't exist in Russian. Those, of course, all of the words I used in English existed in Russian. But the atmosphere of Russian, especially in an immigrant community in the United States where many people were just struggling to make ends meet, the idea of doing something new was very difficult because people were so worried about their day-to-day life. But in English, I had a wider variety of people I could speak to, and I could speak to people who weren't so constrained economically and could help me think beyond the limitations of my life. So what I often find that when I do have new ideas about something, I usually have those new ideas in English. And I feel more comfortable expressing those ideas, projects, even brainstorm English than I do in other languages. So now I'm going to talk about the language called Ladino, which is the language that has an amazing amount of resonance for me, not only from the sounds of the language, but also about the emotional impact of the language. My nephew and my niece were so excited that I was going to be talking about this language that they decided to dress up. So Alex here is my Turkish Sultan, and I think in Turkish his name is Iskender or Iskender. So Alex, do you want to show them your Turkish Sultan costume? Okay, this is my Turkish Sultan. This is my niece Natalie. Natalie's wearing a Turkish shirt and a Mexican skirt because we're talking about Spanish. And I'll explain why I have a Turkish theme. You're probably wondering, she's talking about a Ladino. Why is she discussing Turkey? Ladino is the language that is spoken by Sephardic Jews whose descendants, whose ancestors, were expelled from Spain during the Inquisition in 1492. Now, the language Ladino has various names. It's called Spanyolit, Judesmo, Judeo-Español, and in Morocco it's called Hakatiya. This is the language that was spoken in Spain in 1492 and has many words from other languages, Arabic, Hebrew, also some French, I believe, Greek, Turkish, some Slavic. There are some Slavic words. Because Sephardic Jews moved to various parts of the world, to North Africa, various parts of the Middle East, and the Sultan Bayezid II sent his ships to Spain to bring Sephardic Jews into his empire, the Ottoman Empire. When I first said the word Ottoman Empire, my niece Natalie thought I said, what did you think I said?
Ottoman vampire.
Ottoman vampire. But we're not talking about the Ottoman vampire, we're talking about the Ottoman Empire. And my nephew just happened to have an Ottoman costume, so he decided to wear it. But he's very tired. So this language, the reason it has such an amazing amount of resonance for me is because when I hear the language, I hear 500 years of history in the language. There are words in the language, or there are sounds in the language that don't currently exist in modern Spanish, like the Z sound. So people will say rosa instead of rosa, or there are other sounds that people use that we don't currently have in modern Spanish. And so when I hear this language, I hear the history of the sounds of the language, but I also am absolutely in awe of the fact that the language still exists. Because if you think about it, these people were kicked out of their country because of their religion, and they kept their language. And in the United States, we have people who come here as immigrants and refugees, and by the second generation of their immigration, many of those languages are lost or very much diluted. By the second generation in the United States. Some people even call the United States the graveyard of languages. But over 500 years, Ladino still exists. Incredible. Now, there are various reasons why the language still exists. Some communities were somewhat isolated, or they kept the language as part of their identity. But what I find also amazing in this whole story is the role of music to keep this language alive. Mothers would sing cunas or lullabies to their children, like Durme Durme, so kids learned the language through songs. There were also many songs that were sung at festivals, and when I was preparing a blog post in November or December of last year, of 2011, about the role of Ladino and how it's being preserved and how music is playing a role in this, I found a video of Yasmin Levy, a Sephardic singer from Israel, who was singing Adio Querida in Madrid to an audience of modern contemporary Spaniards. And I had goosebumps all over. I was practically crying because I heard her sing Adio, adio querida, no quiero la vida, me la amargaste tú. And this crowd of Spaniards in Madrid were singing along with her, and I thought, this is amazing. We never could have seen this happen 500 years ago, obviously, because the Jews were kicked out of Spain. But here she was singing this song and having Spaniards sing along with her. And it just showed me that music has this amazing role not only to unify people, but to strike a chord in people and to make people feel that they want to learn a language, that this culture is part of them. And I'm not of Spanish ancestry. And when I hear this music, it absolutely touches my heart. And right now I'm working on creating a documentary this summer about a man in Bosnia who used Ladino during World War II as a child to escape from the concentration camps. I wrote a blog post about this, and I'm going to put the link to this blog post in the description of this video so you can read about it. I have it in English and Spanish, and also you'll see the video clip by Yasmin Levy singing Adiós Querida. And I leave you with this because I've discussed this many times on Spanish media and on CNN. The reason I'm discussing this in English is because I want more people to know about this language, Ladino, and to see Ladino as a model, perhaps, or as an inspiration to keep languages alive, to use music to teach children to learn languages, and to not think of language as a political tool. And this is something I'll discuss in my video in Russian. And something that I always remember is that my mom's mother was a German teacher and professor before World War II in the Soviet Union. And after World War II, she continued to teach German, and she read the poetry of Goethe and other German authors to my mom and her sister, even though they didn't speak German. And my mom said that when she was a kid, she learned the beauty of the German language through the poems of Goethe. And some people in my mother's family were killed during World War II, during the Nazi blockade of Leningrad. But they didn't think of the Nazi horrors during World War II as being the same as the German language. There's a difference. And I think about it with these kids, because here they are in the United States, they're stuck with me as an auntie, so they have to learn Russian and Spanish and other languages, and I don't want them ever to confuse politics and language. So the rest of these videos will be in Russian, French, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, and I hope that you will enjoy them and be inspired to learn languages. Thank you.